Well, hey, good morning, you guys. It's a full house in here. Good morning. Good morning. So glad you're here. Welcome to church. If you're new, so glad that you joined us. And you know what? Can our Uptown Church family, can we welcome UC students back to campus? We're so glad you're here. Welcome to the family. This is a church for anybody. I mean, this is a multi-generational church. We got grandparents in the room. We got parents. We got little kids in kids club. And of course, you know this because you probably walked here if you're a student. We're a church on campus. So we like to say we are for you. And I'm so glad that you are here. I'm a little nervous, though, if I'm being honest. I'm a little nervous for some students. There are some students who are coming to campus who are not from Cincinnati. I don't know if that's you by any chance. I won't call you out. But I know that if you're not from Cincinnati, maybe you're coming from out of town, you might not know this, but I have a concern for you. My fear for you, if you've never been to Cincinnati, especially if you've never been to Clifton, you don't know what you're getting into with the squirrels around here. Squirrels. Now, if you're like me and you're from the country, take whatever image you have of a squirrel and erase it out of your mind. Country squirrels are not like city squirrels. They're totally different. Country squirrels, they are afraid of people. They will give you your distance. They don't want to get up in your business. Like they don't want to be anywhere near you. But city squirrels, bro, these are their streets. These are their streets. I am convinced Clifton squirrels are trying to be like humans. Like they're just like slowly studying the human race so that they can become like us one day and usurp us at the top of the food chain. Listen, I was on campus this last week with my team, moving in a bunch of freshmen. If you're a freshman in the house, shout out. We were moving in freshmen on campus, and a teammate of mine took a picture of this squirrel on campus. Look at that squirrel. That squirrel's trying to be a human, eating the bagel with two hands and everything. Like, eating its morning bagel, just had its morning coffee, just watching students move in. And then it got even crazier. This squirrel's buddy showed up next to it, and they started cheering for UC students. Let's go Bearcats, man. I'm telling you, these Clifton squirrels are different, man. In fact, like we just gave up on it. We just started signing them up to volunteer. I don't know if you saw our welcome team when you got into church this morning. This is an exclusive squirrel-only volunteer team that was welcoming everybody to church. And you know, if there's any squirrels in here, you're exactly where you need to be. God brought you here for a reason. You can sign up to serve too. Would love to have you. No, that's AI slop for you. At church, you're welcome. I'm very excited. I'm very excited that you're here, students. I don't have any fear for you, actually. I have so much hope for you in my heart. I'm so glad that you are here. I believe you're here for a reason. This is an exciting time because you, if you are a young adult, are transitioning in your life, maybe for the first time ever, to like adulthood and to recognizing this weird reality that like your life is now yours to control. Like you're finally in control of your own life. You finally have some freedom. You're out from your parents' house. You're out from under their thumb. Their rules don't apply. You can make the decisions you want to make. You can date who you want to date. You can pursue whichever career you want to pursue. It's almost like the controller for life is finally in your hands. You are in control. Welcome to adulthood. That's what it's like. We become more and more open-eyed to this like reality. They're like, wait a minute, life is kind of like mine to choose to do with. Like it's mine to be responsible for, and I have a little bit of control here. And you know what's funny? Over time, as you grow as an adult, you will realize something that every other adult in here that's a little older than you has found out. That we all at one point bought into this myth of young adulthood, which is that if you are in control of your life, all of life's worries just fade away. That's the myth. Like, I'm finally free. Finally, I got some freedom. Life's gonna be easy now. Life's gonna be good now. In fact, what you'll find is that with the controller in your hand, with life now being yours to control, life is harder. Life is heavier. There's a burden on your shoulders that you didn't have to carry when mom and dad were there. And there's a promise from Jesus that comes in Matthew 11:28, and I think it's a timely promise. Because in this room, we're all, I assume, at least 18 years or older. We're adults here. We have the controller in our hands, and we're realizing maybe life with the controls in our hands is heavier than I realize. I'm just curious, like, would you just be bold enough and raise your hand if anybody in here is a little bit tired? Anybody tired in here? Me too. Me too. Anybody carrying a little bit of anxiety about something on the horizon of life that's coming up? Anybody a little anxious about some stuff? Students, you're starting school tomorrow. I'm sure you're anxious. Does anybody in here at all have a burden and a weight on their shoulders that you can't even name, but you feel it? Anybody? All right, well then just do me a favor, turn to your neighbor and say, me too, bro. Me too. We're all in this together. We are all in this together, and this is why the promise of Jesus is so powerful. It's a promise for all of us. This is what Jesus says in Matthew 11:28. He says, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden or burdened, and I will give you rest. Rest. Do you want some rest this morning? Do you want a little bit of rest for your soul? Not like a better night's sleep type of rest, but a rest for your being, for your bones, for your soul? I think this morning, if you and me are a little open-minded, have an open heart, I think the promise of Jesus could be true for us. I think we might be able to walk out of here a little lighter than when we walked in. Before we go any further, let me just pray for us. Jesus, I want your words to be true. I want rest, and I believe more than just me in this room do as well. Would you deliver some rest to us this morning? Amen. Okay, well, this idea of control, being in control of your own life, or maybe even being controlling, this is not just your micromanaging boss's issue. If you got a micromanaging boss, you know they love control. They love to make sure that every single detail of your work is under a microscope and they have the final word and final say on it. Control isn't just their issue. Control also isn't just your mother-in-law's issue, who likes to be in all of the weeds of your life. And for maybe one of you, if you're a poor and unfortunate soul, if your mother-in-law happens to be your boss, it's not just their issue. This is a human issue. Control is a human issue. It's a part of the human condition, and it's been that way for thousands of years. And it's because there is a flaw in the operating system of the human life. This is how the Bible describes the beginning of humanity. The first time that we see this operating system, the operating system of control, the first time we see it, it's a famous story. Some call it mythology, other call it metaphor, but it's Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. This is what the Bible says in Genesis chapter 3. Now, the serpent was more crafty. The serpent was Satan, the devil, the enemy of God and the enemy of mankind. The serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, to Eve, did God actually say that you shall not eat of any tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, no, we may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that's in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. But the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God. The very first temptation that mankind ever fell into, the temptation that ushered in sin into the human story. Sin, the thing that's responsible for all heartbreak and suffering and evil in the world. The first temptation that mankind ever fell into was the temptation to take control from God. To be in control. To believe that my life is better with me as the controller. It's the original temptation, and it's a part of the human condition. It's a part of our operating system. And when sin entered the story for humans, it's not just that sin made us bad. It's not just that that happened, but it convinced us that we would make better gods than God. If we have the controls in our hands, we're better off than if the controls are in God's hands. This is a human problem, and it affects all of the big and the small things in our life. Every big thing and every small thing is under its influence. In fact, let me prove it to you. Who here grew up with siblings? Anybody have siblings? Okay, a lot of us. Okay, so if you had siblings, I'm gonna tell you a story, and I know for a fact this story played out in your house because either you did it or your sibling did it to you. I grew up with one brother, a younger brother, his name is Braden, and for the most part, my brother and I, we got along really well. Like, we were really good friends, and of course there was a little bit of sibling bickering and, back and forth fighting, but for the most part, we really got along. Except for this one area. There was this one hill that I would die on, and one line that I was not willing to move back off of. Like, this was the thing, and it was the source of most of our biggest fights. And this was the thing, the hill that I was always willing to die on, was who got control of the TV remote. Anybody else? Yeah, you know what I'm saying here. Whoever got control of the TV remote obviously got to choose what was on TV. And I wasn't about to let that be him. That was me. That was my job. I wanted the TV remote in my hands because I wanted to control the shows that we watched. I wanted to watch Fairly Odd Parents, and I wanted to watch, Phineas and Ferb and SpongeBob. And he wanted to watch, I don't know, because he never got the remote. So I have no idea what he wanted to watch, but we were gonna watch what I wanted. I wanted control of that TV remote. It got so bad that if we were watching TV, and I had to go number 2. I need to take care of some business, like duty called, you know what I'm saying? I would take the TV remote with me into the bathroom, and I would lock it in there. And I would take long dumps, you guys. It was a long, long time. I just think about how cruel that is, that I was in the bathroom, I wasn't even in the living room, and I was still forcing him to watch my TV shows when I wasn't there. But it's because control's got a grip on all of us. I needed to be in control of that TV remote. It's a part of our operating system, and it affects all of the big and all of the small things in our life. In fact, I believe that the burden underneath all of our burdens is the burden of control. It's the heaviest one. It's the source of all of them. And I think one of the reasons that it's hard for some of us to believe that, or to see how control really has a grip on our life, is because control lurks under the surface. Most of the time, control is masquerading itself in our life as responsibility. I'm going to say that again. Most of the time, control is masquerading itself in our life as responsibility. Because no one likes a control freak. Nobody likes that person. No one celebrates, oh, the control freak's here. But everybody loves the responsible one. Like every friend group has that one friend who's the leader that always makes the plan, It was not me. But every friend group has them, and everybody loves that person. Everyone loves a responsible person. But I believe most of what we consider responsibility in our life is actually control wearing a mask. It's control behind the scenes, pulling the strings and pulling the levers. We call it responsibility. We'll say things like this. We'll say well, I'm just being responsible. Or I just like to have a plan. Or I'm just thinking ahead. Or I have really high standards. Or if I need to make sure it's done right, so I'm gonna do it. If you want it done the right way, do it yourself. Or if I don't handle it, nobody will. We've attributed and accredited these types of sayings and this mentality to responsible people, but really, the root of this is control. It's control. And here's what control is. Just gonna define it for us this morning. Control is assuming responsibility for outcomes. Control is assuming responsibility for outcomes. And if life has not already taught you this, by the end of the week, I think it will, outcomes are totally outside of our control. Does anyone understand what I'm saying? Maybe nod your head if you've been in a spot of your life you're like, yeah, for sure. Those outcomes, they evade us. They're out of our control.
But a lot of the time in a lot of our life, we are assuming responsibility for those outcomes. And the reason why it's so heavy on our shoulders and there's a burden on our shoulders is because we carry the weight of those outcomes. This is college, isn't it? Isn't this the whole point of college? Like, college is outcome driven. It's like, I'm gonna go to this school so that I can get into this program. And if I get into this program, then I'll get this co-op. And if I get this co-op, then I'll get this job. And if I get this job, then I'll make this salary. And if I make this salary, then I can attract this type of spouse. And then I'll have this type of life. Outcome, 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 outcome. And how many of those can you control? 0. But do you feel the weight of them? Do you feel the weight of that on your shoulders? That's control. That's control under the surface, putting a weight on your shoulder that God never designed for us to carry. In fact, the invitation of Jesus to rest is an invitation to release the outcomes to him. Because the original design that he had for us was that we actually wouldn't be responsible for outcomes. And he says that that's good for us. I mean, just think about it. You can apply for the job, but can you force them to hire you? No. You can pursue someone, but can you force them to love you? Some of y'all, you're not sure on the answer on that one. I'm just going to tell you, no, you cannot. No, you cannot. You can apologize, but can you control whether they forgive you? No. You could raise your kids faithfully, but you can't dictate who they become. You can prepare for the future, but you cannot make the future cooperate. Outcomes are outside of our control. Life will teach you that. And when we assume responsibility for outcomes in our life, there's a burden on our shoulders that Jesus never intended us to carry. Proverbs 16:9 says, "The heart of man makes his plan, but the Lord establishes his steps." Jesus says there's a better way to live. There's a better way to life. A more restful way. One that's unburdened. Out from under the weight of control and the weight of outcomes. And he invites us into it. But it's hard. It's very hard to do. It's one of the reasons why most of us don't. It's one of the reasons why most of us are living under the weight of outcomes. Because deep down, the reason why most of us want control is because there is a fear that is rooted deep in our hearts and has been in the hearts of mankind from the very beginning. And the fear is that God doesn't have your back. Really, it's all just up to you. God doesn't have your back. In fact, that was the original lie of the serpent, wasn't it? God doesn't have your best intentions at heart. And deep down, we believe that. We've got that belief in our heart. It's why we want to control, because we believe that God has turned his back on us and he doesn't have our back. Does God really have our back? When you become a parent, it becomes more obvious than ever before just how much of life and its outcomes are outside of your control. You will realize that if you're not already a parent. And parents in the room, you get it. I'm a dad, and I have 2 kids. I have a 3-year-old daughter. She's our oldest. Her name is Ellie. And my son, his name is Bravo. He is 1 year old, just a little older. And I want to tell you a story about him. This is a picture of me and Bravo. He's a cutie. This is Bravo here. And he's very cute, except for one small feature currently. Right now, Bravo's getting teeth. As babies do, they get teeth. And right now, he has 4 teeth on the bottom of his mouth, which is very cute. But he only has 2 teeth coming in up top. And they're not his front 2 teeth. They're his canines. And they're coming in crooked,
which means my son has got literally the world's biggest gap between his two front teeth. You could kick a football through the uprights of his front teeth. But other than that, he's very cute, and I deeply love him. He is a little over 1, but when he was around 2 months old, my wife Megan and I, we started noticing that Bravo's eyesight, his ability to see, seemed to be a little impaired. We couldn't really figure it out. We couldn't put our finger on it, but he certainly was not tracking his eye movements the way that a kid his age should be, and as he grew, it continued to get worse. So, of course, like any good parent, we were like, we should probably take him to the doctor. We probably need to see what the doctors have to say about this. And we went for months and months to multiple different specialists, pediatric oncologists, pediatric specialists who deal with just the retinas of the eye, and we spent a lot of time with doctors. And they concluded 2 things about Bravo's eyesight. The first thing that doctors confirmed for us is that his vision was, in fact, impaired. In fact, it was dramatically impaired. They could tell that he couldn't see very well at all. He wasn't tracking. His growth was nowhere near a kid of his age where their eyesight should be. They were concerned. They saw our concern, and they shared it. And they also confirmed through the process of testing, they took some genetic testing, they confirmed that Bravo has the genetic makeup of someone who has a genetic eye condition, which means it's in his DNA. His eye condition is a DNA genetics problem, which according to the doctors means that no surgery, no corrective lenses, and no glasses could ever fix his eyesight. But in fact, he was going to be legally blind, and it was going to be permanent. Maybe he could see some figures, maybe he couldn't, but the doctors all concluded this was going to be permanent, and it was going to be legal blindness. And as a parent and as a dad, I felt a lot of things about that. I was afraid. I was super scared. I felt this weird grief that I'd never felt before. It was grief for my kid. Grief of something that they had lost, that I hadn't lost. And I was wrestling with all of this. And I also just realized, like, in this time, I turned the dial of control up in my relationship with my daughter. So I was acting even more overbearing and controlling in her life because I felt so out of control with the outcomes in his life. It was totally out of my hands. There was nothing I could do about it. And I started asking the question, God, do you have my back? I thought you did. I thought you had my back, God. How could this happen? And you know what? Forget me, God. Forget about me. I believed you would have the back of my son. And I guess you don't. Maybe that's where you're at today. Maybe you've been in a place, a long stretch of life where you've been asking the question, does God have my back? Does he have my back covered or not? And I think that there's a analogy, a story that perfectly answers the question, does God have our back? It's the analogy and a story of a king. A king. And this king ruled over a kingdom. And this king was known by all in his kingdom to be the most just king that's ever lived. And the king with the most goodness and grace in his heart that had ever lived. He was beloved in his kingdom. And this just and good king found out one day that someone was stealing from his treasury. So like any just king, he declared an edict to the kingdom. And he declared that when the criminal was caught, the criminal would have to suffer the punishment of 10 lashings, a punishment that fit the crime. But over time, they didn't catch the criminal. But the criminal kept stealing from the treasury. So the king declared another edict. And his second edict was that when they caught the criminal would now have to receive 20 lashings, a punishment
that fit the crime. And again, they didn't catch the criminal, and the criminal began to steal more. So the king declared a third and final edict. When the criminal was caught, they would have to suffer 30 lashings for their crimes. The only issue with 30 lashings is that that was a death sentence. The human body couldn't take more than 30 lashings. 30 lashings always meant an execution. And finally, the criminal was caught. But the criminal ended up being the king's own daughter. And the kingdom was shocked. And rumors started spreading. What would the king do? Some said the king, known for his justice, would carry out the punishment. Because a crime was committed, and a punishment must be sent down in order for justice to be served. But other people who knew the king for his goodness and his grace, they questioned, how could the king do that to his own daughter? That wouldn't be good. There's no love and grace in that decision. And the king had to weigh both of these tensions. And the king decided that even though it was his own daughter that committed the crime, justice must be served, and she must receive 30 lashings for her crimes. So the day of her public execution, she was brought before the entire kingdom and before the king and the executioner. And the executioner tore her shirt to reveal her bare back, and she leaned over a stump. And as the executioner raised his lash to deliver the first lash of her crimes, the king laid his own body over the back of his daughter and told the executioner, whip her. And the executioner and the kingdom, they were confused. Of course, king, we couldn't do that. It would be your back that bore the punishment. And he said, whip her now. And the executioner did. And every lash that was intended for the crimes of the king's daughter landed on the back of the king himself. He covered her back, and the punishment was put on him. And when God sent his one and only Son to this earth, he sent his Son to take the punishment for our crimes so that we would never have to ask again, does God have my back? Because God very literally has your back covered. It's his back that carries the scars for our mistakes. It's his back that the punishment for our crimes was laid. It's his shoulders that carry the weight. Does he have our back? Yes, he does. Jesus has our back. And just 2 weeks ago, we took Bravo to his very last eye doctor's appointment. And over the last 6 months, with a lot of prayer from friends and family in our church community, Bravo was miraculously and completely healed of his vision impairment. He can see perfectly. The doctors have zero explanation. They have no clue how it happened. They just know he sees. He's healed. And during this journey with him, God has been having to show me in new ways just how much he's got my back covered. Just how much he's got my son's back covered. Because 3 years ago, when I had my first daughter, when she was born, I started this thing. I felt like God was just telling me, I don't know for what reason, but sing Amazing Grace over your kids before they go to bed. So I've been singing Amazing Grace over my daughter and my son before they go to bed ever since. And during this journey, and especially before Bravo's healing, there's a line in Amazing Grace in the very first verse of that song that hit me very differently. And I just want to sing the first verse. You bear with me, and if you want to kind of carry my out-of-tune pitch, you can sing with me. But this is how the first verse of Amazing Grace goes. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. And I had to sing that word over my son every night, even before I knew God would heal him. And something happens when we let go of the outcome of life, the outcomes and the weight of outcomes in life, and we receive the rest that Jesus has for us. Something happens. Not only do we receive a rest for our souls, knowing that God has got our back, but God gives us a new mindset. Because the old mindset that comes with the operating system of control is a mindset of what if? What if I don't get this job? What if they don't love me back? What if they're never healed? But when you receive the rest that comes from knowing God has your back and wants to take the weight of outcomes off of your shoulder, God gives you an even if mindset. Even if I don't get that job, God's got my back. Even if they don't love me back, God's got my back. And I had to hold my son in my arms and believe, even if God didn't heal his blindness, God has his back. And that is the rest that Jesus invites you into. It's a rest that goes beyond a good night's sleep and is a rest for your soul. I have one more thing for us. One more thing before we close. I want to read a prayer over us. This is a very famous prayer. It's called the Serenity Prayer, and it was made popular through recovery groups like Alcoholics Anonymous. So maybe you've heard this prayer before. But I think that this prayer is powerful for two reasons for us. One, because we can pray it in the spirit in which it's prayed in recovery groups. We can pray this as recovering controllers and release control of outcomes to Jesus. And I also think that this is a prayer that if you just snap a picture of it when it's on the screen, you could pray over yourself every day, because the rest that Jesus desires for your soul is not a rest that only exists on Sunday morning. It is a rest for Monday morning too. It's a rest for next year. It's a rest for the first year of your marriage. It's a rest for the teenage years of your kids' lives. It is a rest for your soul. And I was wondering if maybe we could read this together as recovering controlaholics. And if this feels a little uncomfortable to you, that's okay. I won't make you stand or anything, but maybe you just pray it in your heart as you ask Jesus to cover your back. I want to receive your rest and your forgiveness, Jesus. Would you cover my back? I want to release control to you. I'll step to the side and we'll read this together. It goes like this. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Jesus has rest for you, and the best decision that you will ever make with your entire life is not the decision of which career to choose or which person to marry, but it's asking Jesus to have your back and receiving his rest and peace for it. Let me pray for you. Jesus, I bless you and I love you and I thank you for the rest that you have for our souls. I ask that we would walk lighter today and this week, not because we just believe all our problems are solved, but because we truly and genuinely believe that you've got our backs. Thank you. Amen.